Hi, Trip. Thank you for being here. It is the end of Q3 2025. How do you feel about Atlanta's industrial market?
I'm an optimist at heart. I'm encouraged about where the market's headed. Um, I feel like things are still headed in the right direction, but candidly, I'm a little concerned about next year and where things are going to go. That's me.
Okay. The quarter actually ended at 9.5% vacant, which is about the same from last quarter. The last time we did this video, we were actually projecting a higher vacancy of close to 10%. But, vacancy has trickled up since 2021. We were at 3.6% in 2021. Now we're at 9.5. What do you think is really driving this higher vacancy in this market? And do you think vacancy has actually plateaued in Atlanta?
So personally, the type of work that I do is not necessarily monster big box deals. So what I am seeing for, let's just say 250 and below, still a lot of activity out there. I think when you have a new building that delivered, and we've had a lot of buildings deliver here of late that weren't right out of the gate being leased, but we've got a lot of big box properties out there right now that are actually moving the meter on the vacancy rate. And so when those start coming off the market, that's going to make a difference. Candidly, the type of stuff that Matthew and I are doing is more smaller type tenant property. But as soon as some of those bigger buildings come off the availability list, I think that'll absolutely make a difference in the vacancy rate. But when you have a 500, 600,000 footer come on the market that's not pre-leased, that's absolutely going to affect vacancy rates. And there's a lot of them sitting vacant right now.
Yep. I think we looked, and since 2021, 2022, Atlanta has built 75 million square feet. And of that, around 25% is still available for lease. So that's definitely
case in point.
Yes, driving that 9.5%.
We did not to interrupt, but we did a little drive-through of the Northeast market, and we were just looking at some of the newer developments. And there's quite a few buildings sitting out there that are vacant. And you could probably tell me the numbers, but 2 years ago, these buildings were pre-leased before they were even completed. And that has absolutely slowed down and made a big difference. For what I do, smaller type bay stuff, still tight.
Yeah.
I couldn't dig down into the numbers and tell you what 50, 40, 30,000 square foot vacancy rates are today, but I would venture a guess that it's significantly lower than the overall market.
Yeah.
So
speaking of, all this new supply that has come online, like you're talking about, construction has been at record lows the past 12 to 18 months. So developers have halted new construction. But this quarter in Q3, we saw 11 new projects break ground, around 2 million square feet of new supply that's going to be added to the market. Why do you think developers are confident again to kick off these projects, even amid the high vacancy rate of 9.5%?
Those guys are pretty good at figuring out where the market's going to go. They don't absolutely know with 100% certainty, but they can look at trends, so forth and so on, and know what they're doing. Most of what we see in the market, or what we saw when we were driving around a few weeks ago, was those big box buildings where they would only do larger deals to kick off the building. And we had a conversation in the car when we were driving around. Okay, so we've got a lot of these storefronts on the front of the building. When will these owners stop saying, we'll only kick off the building with a 400 or a 500,000 square footer, and maybe look at a 100,000 footer or less to kick off a building? Because like I mentioned earlier, what I do on a daily basis is those smaller deals, not doing the Home Depot and Amazon deals. And at some point, the developers are going to stop looking just for the big box deals and maybe doing 3 and 4, or maybe 5 tenant buildings as opposed to 1 and 2 tenant building deals.
Sure.
So
leasing activity was relatively strong in Q3, and I do think we are starting to see some of those large blocks of space, getting inched up kind of bit by bit.
Yep.
We inked nearly 10 million of square feet in Q3. Are there any specific types of tenants or industries that you're seeing in your business kind of inking deals right now, types of tenants?
We're still seeing a lot of 3PL Manufacturing, whether that's going to really start coming back with tariffs and things of that nature, we'll have to see. But I still think that the 3PL business is very active. We've got a client that we're doing deals with across the country, which is great.
Yeah.
But that's what they do. They need the space and they need it yesterday because they've got a contract. I would say for us, for the most part, that's where we're seeing it is the 3PL business as opposed to manufacturing and then, just existing clients who need space. But at the same time, people are very cautious on what it is they're going to do. Are we going to take more space? Are we going to renew? What have you? A lot of people have a lot of decisions they need to make in that regard.
Yeah. These tenants that are going to be renewing soon, we can't really leave this conversation without talking about rates. So we recently did a study and found that across every building size category in Atlanta, rent growth over the last 5 years exceeds 70%. So with rents that are rising quickly, do you think Atlanta's industrial market has reached its tipping point? And are we going to start seeing these rents come down?
So in March or April of 2020, I think the consensus was the market was kind of at the top and was starting to come down. And then COVID hit, and it's just been kind of a rocket ship since then. To kind of answer your question, I will say that we're seeing higher than 70% increases. Maybe it's because I did a great deal on the front end with their last deal. I don't know. No, but I think that overall, we're absolutely seeing higher increases than 70%. And, personally, I think how much higher can we go? But at the same time, when we do have maybe a reset or whatever term you want to use, I think the days of 2019 and early 2020 are not going to come back. Rates are where they are. Something pretty serious would have to happen to make them drop significantly. We're going to see a little bit of a reset, but I think the 70, 80, 90, sometimes 100% increases are going to continue at least for the short-term future because, people that were having renewals coming up 2019, 2020, if they had a 5 or a 7 or a 10-year deal, they're going to get hit hard. And, it's not like the landlords are picking on them individually. Everybody's seeing that. And that doesn't make people feel good when I tell them that. The landlord's not picking on you. It's everybody's seeing it.
Right.
So it's been difficult.
Yeah.
A lot of people have to make tough decisions on what they're going to do.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. This was a great, quick conversation. What do you expect for the rest of this year and going into 2026 for Atlanta's industrial market?
Personally, maybe a little trepidation just to see where things are going, unsure with tariffs, what clients are feeling, what they're seeing. I'm a little bit nervous, but I think overall, going back to what you said, developers are coming out of ground with more product. Probably a pretty good sign that people feel confident about where things are going. Overall, I think the market is headed in the right direction still. I tell clients all the time that the market's cyclical. What goes up has to come down. So at some point, we're going to have a reset. I think you'd agree that rates haven't necessarily dropped. We may see some landlords getting a little more aggressive, but overall rates haven't dropped. It's a reset. I don't think things are going to drop back to pre-COVID levels. I'm not seeing a slowdown in activity. I certainly don't see landlords dropping rates anytime soon. I would imagine you don't either.
And with vacancy kind of hovering right now, I think that's a good indication of vacancy likely has plateaued. We don't have a ton of supply coming online. So I do think availability in this market will begin to tighten.
Well, you said 2 million square feet coming available, new construction.
Yes.
That's not a whole lot in the grand scheme of things. And, eventually that will get picked up. So we'll just see where things go.
Yeah.
I'm still optimistic at the end of this interview.
Yeah, me too.